Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to look at something pretty incredible. Imagine finding a lost ancient calendar.
Hmm.
And this isn't just any calendar for, planting crops. This is something else entirely, sourced mainly from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was supposedly built to predict huge events, to map out all of human history.
The entire 7,000-year arc from Adam all the way to what they called the Age of Rest.
Which takes us straight to the Essenes.
It does. And you have to remember, before we found the scrolls, we knew very little about them. It led to all this debate. I mean, were they a radical fringe group? Some kind of cult?
Or the opposite, right? Some people saw them as the keepers of the purest form of Judaism.
Exactly. The most precise, the most dedicated to the numbers, to the calendar. And, that very precision, the content of their writings, actually led some critics to say their views were, quote, too Christian for the Jewish thought of their time.
That's the perfect setup. So
Right.
our mission for this deep dive is to really get into the nuts and bolts of their system. We're mapping out this huge 7,000-year framework of time that they believe was built on the ultimate blueprint,
The 7-day creation week.
the 7-day creation week.
So if you start at the very top, the macro level, the Essenes just did not see history as a random series of events. They saw 7,000 years of humanity running in perfect parallel with those 7 days of creation.
So it's a pattern, a grand divine dispensation where time itself is basically reflecting God's work.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's get into that division. We have 7,000 years, and you said it's broken into 4 distinct ages. Why 4? And why are they different lengths?
Well, it's a really elegant structure when you look at it. The first 3 ages are each given exactly 2,000 years.
2,000 each.
Yep. They are, in order, the Age of Chaos, then the Age of Torah, and finally the Age of Grace.
Which many people today would probably call the church age.
That's the one. So that gets you to 6,000 years right there.
Okay, so 6,000 years. That mirrors the 6 days of work, of creation. But the whole idea is a 7-day pattern. So if the first 3 are 2,000, how does that last age fit into the 7,000-year total?
Ah, that's the crucial part. The final age is different. It's the Age of Rest, or the Sabbath age, and it's only 1,000 years long.
Only 1,000.
It reflects the seventh day, the Sabbath. It's set apart, it's distinct, it's a period of rest and completion. So the pattern of 7 is maintained, even though the final block of time is, half the size of the others.
I see. So it's not a simple mathematical division like 7 times 1,000. It's more of an analogy, a structural one. It's saying that this final 1,000-year cycle is qualitatively different.
You've got it. It reinforces this idea that all of human history is running on this massive 7-cycle rotation, with that 7th cycle being the ultimate period of rest.
It's a statement that everything has to fit into this rigid, divinely ordered schedule.
There's no room for randomness in their system.
So once they have this huge 7,000-year roadmap, they're going to need some mile markers, right? If the ages are the big sections, let's zoom in. How did they measure time more precisely? I believe they used something called onus.
The ona is a fascinating unit of time. And the math is just, well, it's elegant. Since those first 3 ages are 2,000 years, and they decided each age would have 4 onas, that automatically sets the length of 1 ona.
At 500 years, it's interlocking.
It has to be. And if you calculate that out across the whole 7,000 years, the sources point to a total of 14 onas.
Okay, let me see. 4 onas for each of the 3 big ages gets you to 12, and then 2 more for the final 1,000-year age of rest. Yep, 14.
But this is where it gets really interesting, where the cosmology comes in. The sources point out that if you set aside the age of rest, that final Sabbath age, you're left with 12 onas.
12.
And that 12 count is conjectured to correspond perfectly to the 12 constellations in the sky, and, maybe more importantly, to the 12 tribes of Israel.
Wow, okay. That's a huge insight. It's like they saw time, prophecy, and the heavens as one perfectly synchronized clock. The destiny of Israel was literally written into the stars and this millennial timeline.
It really speaks to their worldview. I mean, for them, time wasn't just this random linear thing. It was a structure, a cycle governed by these spiritual and astronomical signs.
So we had these 500-year onas, but they still needed to get more precise than half a millennium. They went even smaller, right? Using the biblical Jubilee cycle. How did that work?
Again, every unit nests perfectly. So every 500-year ona is made up of exactly 10 jubilees.
And a Jubilee is 50 years, so 10 times 50.
Is 500. It fits perfectly. It just shows this incredible numerical rigor they were working with.
That consistency lets you see the whole structure. So those first 3 ages, the 6,000 years of work, that works out to an amazing 120 full Jubilee cycles.
And if you add in that final age of rest, The entire 7,000-year timeline is exactly 140 jubilees. The system is just so numerically rigid, which is exactly why modern researchers have become so fascinated with it.
And this is where it stops being ancient bookkeeping and starts becoming, well, modern intrigue. This isn't just a historical curiosity. A lot of the current interest comes from researchers like Dr. Ken Johnson, who've highlighted these specific, almost astonishing calculations the Essenes made thousands of years ago.
Yes, they weren't just measuring the past, they were projecting the future. The source we're looking at brings up two key predictions from their calendar, and the first one is genuinely surprising.
What is it?
Calculation 1. Using their strict 50-year Jubilee cycles, the Essenes calculated the year of the Messiah's death to be 32 AD.
32 AD.
In our calendar.
In the Gregorian calendar.
That's compelling.
Yeah.
I mean, for a group that existed before the event to calculate a date that aligns with a major Christian historical marker, but
Sure.
how? How could they get that kind of pinpoint precision with a 50-year block as their main unit of measurement? Well, it implies they had a very, very specific starting point for their timeline. Maybe something connected to Daniel's prophetic weeks, something that let them measure in these big 50-year steps but still land on a single year like 32 AD. They either had data we don't, or their framework was just that perfectly aligned with history.
Okay, so what's the second calculation, the one that's really getting people talking today?
This is the one. It impacts our immediate future. Based on their timeline, the Essenes calculated that the start of that final Sabbath cycle, the 1,000-year age of rest, would begin in the year 2075.
2075.
And this is where their timeline creates a huge immediate problem. That 2075 date creates about a 50-year difference, an entire Jubilee cycle, when you compare it to a lot of the more, let's say, conventional prophetic timelines people study today.
A 50-year mystery. That's a massive gap to bridge. So the Essenes placed the start of that age of rest, what they call the 13th Ona,
Or the 130th Jubilee.
squarely in 2075. So how on earth do you reconcile a 50-year difference between two otherwise very rigid systems of calculation?
This is where the researcher we're citing proposes something really fascinating. It's a conjecture, but he uses a theological approach, not just trying to make the math fit. He models a period of transition based on a very specific set of instructions from the Torah.
He's trying to bring the conventional timeline into sync with the Essenes' 2075 date.
Exactly.
Okay, we definitely need to slow down and unpack that analogy. What specific instructions are we talking about here? And why would an ancient agricultural law apply to a timeline for the entire planet?
It's called the forbidden fruit rationale, and it comes directly from Leviticus 19. The law says that when the Israelites planted fruit trees in the Promised Land, the fruit was forbidden for 3 years. You couldn't eat it.
A period of probation.
A necessary period of transition, yes. Then, in the 4th year, the fruit had to be consecrated, offered up as praise to God before it could finally be eaten.
Okay, that's really deep in the fine print of the law. So how does he apply that template to modern history, to the state of Israel?
The author suggests that Israel's reestablishment in 1948 needed to go through its own 4-year period of preparation. It's like the fruit of the new nation wasn't ready yet.
So you take 1948, add that 4-year fruit probation.
Yeah.
And you land on 1952.
You land on 1952, and what the author points out is that this 1952 date conveniently syncs up Israel's return with their use of the Shemitah count, the 7-year Sabbath cycle. So 1952 becomes the new synchronized base date for counting out a generation.
And this is the jumping off point for the final equation.
Right.
He uses that 1952 date to figure the kingdom age should start in 2033. But 2033 is still a long way from 2075.
It is. They're still missing 43 years.
So they needed to find a 43-year period in between.
Precisely. And they propose that this missing 43 years is the required transitional period built directly on that forbidden fruit template. The whole calculation is analogical, not just algebraic.
Let's walk through this step by step because this is definitely the most complex part of the whole thing.
Right.
How do you get 43 years from that specific Levitical law?
Okay, so you start in 2032, which the author calculates as the end of the current church age. From there, you add a 40-year period of testing.
40 years. Where does that come from?
It's the theological analog to the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years. A necessary period of purification and preparation before they could enter the Promised Land.
I see. So 2032 plus 40 years of desert-style testing gets us to 2072. We're close. Where did the last 3 years come from?
That's the final piece of the template from Leviticus, the 3-year fruit probation, the time before the land is fully ready for the new age. So you take 2072, you add the 3 years of probation.
And you get 2075.
Perfectly.
So just to recap, 2032, the end of the church age, plus 40 years of testing, plus 3 years of fruit probation equals 2075. That 43-year transition, built on this really unique combination of analogies, perfectly syncs the author's 2033 Kingdom Age start with the ancient Essene date.
It is a remarkable piece of synthesis, all built on these numerical patterns and theological analogies. And it's also worth noting, this same author independently agrees with the Essenes on the 32 AD death date, and even suggests 2026 as a start for the tribulation. It suggests a really deep alignment between this ancient framework and certain modern interpretations.
So this whole deep dive into the Essene calendar really shows the power of numerical rigor in ancient thought. I mean, we've seen this stunningly detailed, rigid framework with its onas and jubilees and these huge 7,000-year cycles that somehow provides dates that align surprisingly well with modern calculations.
And that alignment is the central challenge. The author really emphasizes this. If you think the Essenes were wrong about one thing, then you should probably dismiss the entire 7,000-year framework. But if they were right about 32 AD, or if their system allows for this kind of perfect synchronization, then the whole structure demands your attention.
A huge caveat, though.
A huge one. We have to remember these timelines are conjectures. They're built on limited, often selectively released data from the scrolls. It's very high-stakes chronological work.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to explore. We saw how the author used that forbidden fruit law from Leviticus, the 3 forbidden years plus the 4th year of consecration, as a template for transitioning into the final age of rest. It perfectly filled a 43-year gap.
When combined with the 40-year testing period.
Right. So if these ancient agricultural or legal templates, buried in the fine print of the Torah, might actually hold the keys to mapping out grand prophetic timelines, what other laws could be out there? What other specific rules about things like, say, inheritance or debt or even warfare might contain hidden temporal templates for future global events? It challenges you to look at the Torah not just as law, but maybe as chronology.